notice today, right over here, there's a book propped up that says, "Don't panic" on it. "Don't panic" is a phrase on the cover of the actual Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Not the cover of the book about the Hitchhiker's Guide, but supposedly on the cover of the fictional book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The novel explains that it was partly because the device, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, looked insanely complicated. It looked really complicated to operate, and partly to keep intergalactic travelers from panicking. Quote, "It is said that despite its many glaring and occasional fatal inaccuracies, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy itself has outsold the Encyclopedia Galactica because it is slightly cheaper and because it has the words 'Don't Panic' in large, friendly letters on the cover." Arthur C. Clarke said Douglas Adams' use of "don't panic" was perhaps the best advice that could be given to humanity. Ironically, on February 6, in 2018, SpaceX launched the Falcon Heavy rocket, carrying Elon Musk's Tesla Roadster. Right on the screen, on the cover of the Roadster, was "Don't Panic" written on the screen. Now, isn't that reassuring? Just launched into space a car with the words "Don't Panic" on the dashboard. Luckily, no human was on it. At this point, it's somewhere well beyond Mars and continuing to travel outward. It is also recommended by The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that as one travels through life, to always to know where your towel is. Somebody who can stay in control of virtually any situation is somebody who is said to know where his or her towel is. The logic behind this statement is presented in Chapter 3 of The Hitchhiker's Guide. It says, "A towel has immense psychological value. For some reason, if a strag, a non-hitchhiker, discovers that a hitchhiker has his towel with him, he will automatically assume that he is also in possession of his toothbrush, his washcloth, his soap, a tin of biscuits, a flask, a compass, a map, a ball of string, net spray, white weather gear, spacesuit, etc., etc., etc. Furthermore, the non-hitchhiker person will then happily lend the hitchhiker any of these or a dozen other items that they don't have." Let's see where, "Any man who can hitch the length and breadth of the galaxy, rough it, slum it, struggle against terrible odds, win through, and still knows where his towel is clearly a man to be reckoned with." I'm going to get to why I just said all that later. Today, Jesus begins by telling his disciples that the parable he's about to tell them is about praying, always, and not losing heart. How often I have heard it, but I pray and I pray and I pray to no result. Or worse, I hear some prosperity preacher tell people that if they are not succeeding in the world, they must be bearing some sort of sin or not praying properly. They're praying wrong. Good. The parable focuses on a widow dealing with a judge in a corrupt justice system. Luke twice tells us that the judge in this tale is someone who neither fears God nor respects people. And Jesus himself characterizes the judge as unjust. An unjust judge who doesn't fear God sounds about right if you think of this day and age. But thinking of Jesus' time, who were the judges for the Jewish community? They were the Sanhedrin. They were recruited from the following sources, either priests or Levites, and any ordinary Jews who were members of those families having a pure lineage, such that their daughters were allowed to marry priests. So even in this simple parable, Jesus is getting a little political. So is the widow deterred by this unjust judge? Not at all. The widow comes to the judge again and again in pursuit of justice. The verb used, erketo, is she kept on coming. And this isn't a gentle plea. She is aggressive in it. She keeps coming and coming and coming. She tells him, grant me justice against my opponent, against the one who has treated me unjustly. Though her demands are strong and just, the judge does nothing. He refuses to act because he simply cannot be bothered. And so he does not respond at all at first. Now, knowing who the judge is, his assumed role and lineage in the community makes the judge's lack of action especially appalling. Specifically, when it's compounded with the fact that this is a widow making the demand, because widows are counted among the most destitute of society, alongside other vulnerable groups such as the poor, orphans, or resident aliens, immigrants, refugee seekers. Because of the precarious social and economic position of such groups, the Bible texts also make provisions for them. The Old Testament and the Hebrew law makes provisions for these specific groups and how we should act when we run into them, helping to ensure that they do not fall victim to exploitation. Though widows are assumed to be the downtrodden and the broken and the meek, the widow in this parable resists the exploitation to which she is subjected to. She resisted and persisted. Like other widows before her, actually, such as Tamar in Genesis 38, or Ruth and Naomi, the widow in Luke 18 takes matters into her own hands. Her persistence and call for justice are such that the judge characterizes her actions as that of a boxer, actually. Now, it's hard to hear that in translation, which says, because the widow keeps bothering me, I will grant her justice, so she won't wear me out. But in the original Greek, the judge says, because this widow causes trouble for me, I will give her justice so that she may not, in the end, give me a black eye with her coming at me. Don't mess with this widow. She'll take you to the ring and you'll be down for the count. English translations in time have obscured the humor that Luke infuses into the scene, but evidently from the giggles you kind of hear it now. We're supposed to laugh. This is a topsy-turvy picture of a meek and demure widow taking on and boxing the ears of an unfair judge. But as New Testament scholar Scott Spencer rightly recognizes, the humor in the scene is not one of comic relief. The humor in the scene instead pokes fun at the powers that be, lampooning and upending the unjust system stacked against widows, orphans, immigrants, and the like. Like our political cartoons of today, Jesus' parable encourages us to laugh at those who wield their power unethically. We laugh, though, in order to challenge such figures and ultimately to offer a different way. A different way, an alternative way of being and acting in this world. Jesus offers a few concluding comments that touch on the character of God and the nature of faith. He uses the judge's words as a jumping off point. Jesus says, listen to the unjust judge. Judge. What does the unjust judge say? Yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will grant her justice, so that she may not wear me out by continually coming at me. Most importantly, the judge says, I will grant her justice. Through her persistence and through her own faith, knowing if she keeps coming at him, he will break down. While Jesus compares God to the judge with this situation, the real point of the comparison is one of contrast. God is, in fact, not like this reluctant, responsive judge. God does not need to be badgered into listening, and when God does respond, God does so willingly. If anything, God is more like the widow in her own relentless commitment to justice. The widow also shows how we are to be orientated towards God, how we are to be praying in relationship with God. Now, I did mention prosperity preachers and people who say I pray and pray, and many interpret this passage about really being persistent in prayer to get what you want. But what is this widow's pursuit? What is she relentless in? How can we change the perspective of this text, often simply interpreted as pray and pray often? Which isn't a bad thing, but do you hear what she is after? The widow is relentless in her pursuit of justice. You see, we are called to a life of prayer, and we should be praying often, if not always. We should be making our daily living into a prayer and an act of worship. I pray when I write. I pray as I leave. I pray for my fellow brothers and sisters of the way. I pray for this congregation, and I pray and do not fail you. Those are constant prayers, woven throughout my day. Yet, with a prayer on my heart, I am called, we are called, to the pursuit of justice. Then the question becomes, what does justice look like? What is the justice we are pursuing? Well, let me tell you exactly what the justice is we are pursuing. Through ministries we support. We are seeking justice in immigration and refugee support. Right there in that box. Also, here in the state, there is IRSG, which provides information, education, and general consciousness raising within our New Hampshire denomination family and the broader community, where possible, about immigration and refugee and asylum seekers through their personal plight in our state, as well as broader immigration and immigration-focused policy concerns. We're also seeking justice through environmental stewardship. The Environmental Stewardship Mission Group is developing a brochure on Green Congregational Challenge. It provides information on education about becoming a green congregation. They're also planning for the next New England Youth Environmental Justice Summit over the fall and winter months. They're planning this out for a date hopefully sometime in March of 2020. The Economic Justice Mission Group of the New Hampshire United Church of Christ and Justice Business Ministries is focused on heeding the call of our faith to be a voice for economic justice, to serve as a catalyst for others in UCC congregations statewide, as well as others faith communities to join and gather in a faithful witness to economic justice. There's the Peace with Justice Advocates of New Hampshire, UCC, which is committed to growing peace by being inwardly contemplative, praying always. To allow God to disarm our hearts and transform us into a people of peace and nonviolence. Being outwardly active and publicly witnessing, evangelizing, and teaching about peace and love and nonviolence in our churches and greater society. Being in the community with and acting in solidarity with other individuals and groups rooted in peace and nonviolence. Some of those issues include challenging Islamophobia or challenging militarism, challenging the U.S. relationship with Israel and Palestine. We have a group that's working to seek justice and remedy our opioid crisis. They're helping churches to become healing communities for all of us who are affected by opioid crisis and substance use. Our goal is to provide local churches with resources to engage their congregations in programming that works to reduce stigma and expand its potential for healing. You take part in the ONA movement of the United Church of Christ, and that mission is to bring awareness to churches and educate them on acceptance for making a safe place for all of God's children. We hope that we can increase participation in our mission groups so that we might reach a wider range of churches. We're hoping that more congregations will become ONA, and we are making good progress. There's a racial justice mission group. All these groups have lovely initials. When you put them all together, I think we have every letter from A to Z. The Racial Justice Group is awakening to racial justice in 2019 to develop a process for churches in New Hampshire to become racial justice churches. Just yesterday, we heard about this, and we saw the program book. As a matter of fact, I think Marge has a copy of it. It's over there. You can look at it later. You can also download it online. Interesting note, our Justice and Witness Minister from New Hampshire denomination headquarters took a look at that and said, we need to take this back to Cleveland and make it available for all our churches. So New Hampshire is already a step ahead of the national movement. All these programs and initiatives are just, that I mentioned, are actually from our annual report of the New Hampshire United Church of Christ. Now, why did I mention don't panic button at the beginning? When we see all the injustice and the work to be done and become overwhelmed and just want to curl up and stay on the couch and say, I can't do that, we kind of get into panic mode and we're bombarded with all the injustices of the world. But I can tell you, you are not alone. And that's why I mentioned the tower. You see, it is also recommended that as one travels through life to always know where one's towel is. Somebody who can stay in control of virtually any situation, somebody who is said to know where his or her towel is. Our towel is prayer. That persistent prayer, that constant relationship that goes this way, that allows us to minister this way. That constant connection with God, and with God all these things can get done. Take a moment out of each day to just pause and pray, to wrap yourself in that towel, if you use that metaphor, or a shawl of prayer, or a cascade of prayer, whatever image works for you. Then, if you can, try to make a conscious effort that whatever you are engaged in, be it work or play, make it a prayer. Offer it to God in that moment. This becomes habit, and it becomes woven into our lives. Jesus, by ending on a question of whether he will find faith at his return, he raises a number of additional questions for us. How do followers not lose heart and maintain the faith in the light of the fact that Jesus is not returning as soon as many would like? Definitely not as soon as the writers of our gospel believed he would be. How are we to act if God's justice is not delivered according to our own timetable? How do we go on in the face of injustice if God's ultimate justice only arrives suddenly at Jesus' return? In response to such questions, Luke maintains that we are to act like the widow. We are not to wait quietly for Jesus' return and accept our fates in an oppression-ridden world. We are instead to resist injustice with resolve and constancy of the widow. That is where we're like this. Not in prayer to God, but in our work against injustices in this world. As Jesus explains, prayer is not a passive activity, but one that actively seeks God and pursues God's will. That is our persistence. Seeking God's will in this world is what's right and what is just. Actively pursuing what God is calling us to pursue. Like the widow, we are to persevere in our faith, crying out to God day and night. But their cry is not, God, do something. It's, God, what do you want me to do? How can I do more? Do I need to gather 3 or 4 or 5 or a church? Do I need to reach out to the churches around me so we can be stronger in certain actions? With the strength of persistent prayer, all things are possible in God. And all these little projects can slowly chip away at the injustices of this world as we seek to bring God's kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven. Amen. Please rise and bow to your spirit and join us in singing hymn number 290.